Welcome, everyone, to Stranded in Pittsburgh. Nick and Nate alongside you for this week's episode. Unfortunately, Ethan was not able to make it. As part of his parole hearing, he has to sweep the bottom of the Ohio River, so he's not going to be with us. But fortunately, we have someone who's probably a lot smarter than him, and I'm afraid of my use of the word probably there. I feel like that's not a good thing to say to a guest, but I'll take my lumps when it comes to that time. Michael McKenry is here. How you doing?
Good, and I'm glad he's following up on his parole. I heard jury duty's next, and then possible picking up trash on the side of the highway. So,
Yeah.
and he probably is smarter than me, so don't feel too bad.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you never know until I meet him. Well, maybe we can have a debate or something and see who can win that battle.
that would
Oh,
be.
maybe
Go ahead,
maybe
Nick.
you guys had to run in too, because he covers the Pirates every once in a while too. So
Yeah,
I'm sure we have. Yeah,
it's hard to forget him once you see him, but that's enough time on Ethan for now.
maybe he just he ghosts me.
Maybe
Maybe get on him for that too.
Yeah.
We did a thing called Kangaroo Court. Just throw some fines at him for not being here.
I don't know, Nate. That might be a little harsh, but he's blown us off a few times in the past. It's kind of a running gag. But you'd think for someone like this, he would make time to show up. But
so he technically big league you guys.
I think so. He's forgetting his roots.
Wow.
But you always hate to see a friend do that. But anyway,
I love that we just destroyed him.
Yeah.
We love you, Ethan.
You get a former pirate and TV analyst on. You spend 2 minutes crapping on a guy he's never met before. That's guest of the year worthy already. Anyway, last time we talked, which was 3 years ago, as we were saying before we recorded, you were actually telling us how the broadcasting thing was kind of new to you. It was something that maybe fit your life better than it fit you. So it's kind of ironic that you were working this job, but now a few years have passed. You've been doing this thing for a while now. So how's the TV side of things going for you now?
Remind me exactly. You said 2020s when we talked.
Yes.
So I was 18 was my first year and pre and post, and then got into the broadcast right after that. And 2020 was a mess. I mean, obviously with the pandemic and everything else, we got hit really hard when it came to, who could come to the office, who couldn't come to the office. We had a skeleton crew, and it stayed that way all the way through this year. We even lost 3 people, God bless their souls. And never got it replaced because we're always kind of in between. We went through a transition from AT&T to Time Warner. Time Warner really just wanted out the whole time because Discovery owned them. Now back in limbo, don't know where it's going to go. It's either going to be NESN or MLB. So yeah, I think I learned all the things the hard way, and I think it's a blessing. I really do. I hate it for my teammates at AT&T. That is no longer. Now it's, I believe it's Sportsnet Pittsburgh is what NESN just changed it to for hockey. So I'm excited to see where it goes. They're going to bring a great product. If it's NESN, MLB, I don't know much about, but they're trying to take over a lot of these local regions. So it's going to be very interesting. But I'd say over the last couple of years, more than anything, I've learned a lot of baseball. I've had to do some things very, very different. I did most of my broadcast remote. That's how I learned how to be in the booth. And I also was doing pre and post at the same time. So it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. I didn't really get to learn. I just kind of did because I needed to. We didn't have enough people. So yeah, it's been a learning experience. It's been fun. It's been heartbreaking at times, but I wouldn't change any of it because it's all part of that learning experience. I feel like you learn more from tough than you do from easy. So it's been good and bad, to say the least.
Absolutely. And, you're doing that mechanics segment now, which I love watching. Was that your idea, or did they kind of come to you and say, we want you to give a in-depth breakdown?
I don't want to give him credit. Dave Ricchini, he's one of our main producers. I guess you would say he's our executive producer now, came up with the name, and it stuck. And I'm going to carry that name on. I'm going to trademark it and kind of move it wherever, I end up. Hopefully it's in Pittsburgh, but even if it's not full-time in Pittsburgh, I plan on always being around here doing things. I live here now. So yeah, it's a segment I really enjoy. I think it's really good for like coaches, parents, and kids just to kind of learn the ins and outs. I wish I had more time. And because of that, I'm going to start doing it more on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I'm building a little studio down in my basement with the same mat I have at AT&T, a big giant TV, and I'm going to do breakdowns of different things all off season and just kind of release them weekly.
It's awesome. Nate, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, just since you've taken over and gotten into the TV aspect of things and on the broadcast, what do you think's been, the most exciting thing you've called so far for the Pirates?
So I was on radio, and this is not a Pirates moment. It was Mookie Betts. He makes a play in right field, and he grabs it with his glove, spins, and throws an absolute dart. PNC where it kind of like bolts out a little bit and goes towards the Clemente wall. It's right before it kind of tails back in and it's bolting out. He's right there. He turns, and I'm saying an absolute missile to third base to get the lead runner. I believe it was Brian Reynolds. I'm not sure. And I was just mind boggled. And on air, I said that had to be a glimpse for older Pirates fans of what Clemente was. I got destroyed for it because nobody's Clemente, and I get that, and I wasn't saying that. But that play was the most remarkable play I've seen a right fielder make in my time in baseball, and it looks so easy. He fell into the net. It was just a remarkable play. So that was probably the coolest thing I'd seen. I got to see a couple walk-off home runs. The coolest moment I've seen so far is when Newman hit that home run on Steve Blass's last game. Palacios' first home run reminded me of my first home run as a Pirate. It was epic. The blackout game this past year, opening day when Kutch came back, Russell's catching, and AJ's throwing out the first pitch. There's been a lot of good memories for a team that hasn't won much. And it's kind of funny to think, but you remember, little moments that are special, and some of those moments that I can look back and say, man, I don't know if I've ever seen that before, or hey, somebody just made history. The immaculate innings this past year, I saw 2 of them. Just those things you just never forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, baseball's made of those little moments. I went to a Cleveland Brewers game a couple years ago, and the Brewers threw a combined no-hitter, which was crazy because it's like that could just happen at a baseball game. History out of nowhere. And kind of shifting the focus, this year a lot of ratings have been up. I think AT&T Sportsnet even saw a pretty big growth, despite the Pirates still maybe not being where people want them to be. Attendance was up. In your mind, do you think that was directly correlated to a pitch clock, or do you think there's some other reasons too that we saw kind of fan interest go up the way it did?
I think the World Baseball Classic had a lot to do with it. And I think the rule changes, the way it was promoted, had a lot to do with it. I think it brought intrigue. And I think there was momentum going into the season and excitement. I think they're doing a lot better job of branding the game and branding the players. They have some new podcasts out. They have a lot of guys that kind of come in and out of MLB Network, and they're doing a better job. It's younger, it's cooler, it's hipper. I think that's good for the younger fans. And also they've kept the old school around enough. And I think that's really, really a good thing. I think the mixture is what the game needs. And I think combining all that together has made it really, really cool. I think there was a lot of interest because it was new, and when things are new, people kind of jump on board. And I think because of that and the way the game was this year, very exciting, very fast, I think people are going to be more or less lifetime fans.
I was at Rivers Casino when Trey Turner hit that big home run in the semifinal. That was a good sports moment for me. Anyway, the Pirates won 14 games more than they did last season. What, despite those cold stretches that people would have made you think the world was ending during the dog days of summer there a little bit, how did you feel like this team kind of progressed through the year? They started off really hot, they slumped a bit, and then towards the end, they caused some ruckus in the wild card race for some division rivals. I mean, what did you make of that progression through the season?
April was remarkable for me. I've seen that before with teams that they just hit on all cylinders. Cruz going down and us still playing really, really well was, I think, a picture of who we are, of the resiliency and what we can be. They didn't allow that to kind of beat them down. They said the next man up. And I think that's what great teams do. You can't focus on what you don't have. You have to focus on what you have that given day. And they did that very well early on, and then they hit their lumps. And I think because they were a young team and the way the media is in Pittsburgh, they think one guy's going to fix it. Henry Davis coming up is not going to fix a team struggling offensively, trying to learn the game and learn the analytical department, learn all their new coaches, and try to make the team and try to stay in the big leagues. I mean, that's the reality. That mentality and that mindset is so tough to gather in the big leagues and perform at the same time. So I thought they did a great job. If you look into, how it progressed, gets over that all-star break, and then you started seeing signs that there was life, a heartbeat that was going in one direction. And they took off at the end and they played really good teams. I think some of the younger guys are still putting way too much pressure on themselves, and I think that'll kind of, I guess, die down going into next year, depending on how their exit meetings were. I haven't gotten into that with some of the guys yet, but if they had good exit meetings and they know where they stand and they feel wanted, I think they'll take off next year.
Now, that 14 win improvement, obviously a lot of positive signs coming off of back-to-back 100-loss seasons. But Ben Charrington just recently said, wasn't extremely satisfied, though, with, some of the things they saw this season. Just your thoughts on, his most recent comments about the team, where they weren't satisfied enough.
Well, it's tough because he says all the right things when it comes to media. He's very, very good at it. And yeah, they didn't hit in all areas, but I think the hardest thing to do as a front office or a staff is look at what's on the field and say, how's that human being doing? It's not easy jumping around. It's not easy for Henry Davis to play right field every day and hit. Nobody talks about that, but it's not easy. It's not easy to DH for the first time. That's why Andrew took a huge step forward. Yes, he made some swing changes, but he also had a year under his belt DHing. That's why older guys are a smart way to go in that DH fashion. If Henry Davis goes there, his personality doesn't necessarily fit in that spot because he'll overthink. He'll always be looking at the iPad. If you look at his numbers, DHing, they're not as good as when he plays right field. So learning those positions, moving around, and then always having that worry that someone's going to come grab you and take you into Shelton's office and send you down because of that turnover effect affects the player. So I think you have to take some of it with a grain of salt. But what he's saying is, these guys have high floors and extremely high ceilings. And some of these guys didn't hit their floors. Like I think Ji-Hwan Bae could really jump forward if he's a Pirate next year. I think some of these guys could be potential, game changers for us, but they're going to have to be given a chance. They're going to have to be entrusted in their ability and said, hey, you're just like Jack Sawinski this year. We are not going to give up on you. Because what happened when they gave up on Jack in the middle of the year against lefties? He played terrible, right? Because his personality couldn't handle it. Because he wanted to figure it out, wanted to do better, but you can't figure it out if you're not doing it. So I think there's a lot that goes into what, Charrington says. I think they're going to be really aggressive this offseason and try to go get some players. Hopefully it's pitching, but we'll see. We'll see.
Segue right into my next question perfectly. Henry Davis, him playing in right field was obviously a big topic of conversation for basically the entire year. In your opinion, what's the best way kind of to make the best of his and Endy Rodriguez's, abilities?
Well, you guys are huge fans, and I want to ask you the same questions.
Oh boy.
Like the 14 win improvement, right? Like I've got the roster up now. I mean, you can say Henry Davis started to move stride forward, and we could talk about development, what they do, in the offseason, what could make them take it to the next level. But like, I think we've got proven that Triolo is a huge asset for us. And for me, he's the reason why I don't think we go buy a first baseman. There's no reason because we got Triolo, we got Joe, both guys combined. You're thinking about over 20, 25 homers, maybe even 30 if they play really well, and an OPS over 800 and defense plus. So, I mean, when you look at some of the good trends, I wish they would have given Adar more of a chance, but they didn't. I think he could have been a huge asset. I think he's gone now, but what do you guys think? Because that's what really matters. You guys are the fans. I could break this down left, right, up, and down, but the reality of it is I hear a lot of the same things from the fans. I'd love to hear it from you.
It's, in my opinion, it's one of those things. It's like, where do you move Endy to? There's really nowhere to move him, but at the same time, I don't know if Henry has looked totally comfortable in right field. So that's why I'm glad I don't manage the team, despite a lot of the claims I make where I could do much better than the people currently in the front office.
What about you?
I think Davis staying in right field is probably a good thing. I know, being brought up into the minors, he was in the catching position, but I think Endy Rodriguez is your everyday starter. But I think the idea of potentially platooning Davis and Josh Palacios, because I mean, we saw, a lot of positives from Palacios. Really liked his play, especially his bat. And then Davis could slot in at that DH position whenever Kutch isn't in the lineup, if Kutch is back. So I think Davis being in the lineup pretty much as possible, I think is good. And also Palacios. I mean, it's tough because I think Palacios really made a good statement for himself this year.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be a part of the rotation. He's your igniter, in my opinion. I think Henry Davis should be catching more. So if you want my opinion, that's not from the organization. If I get a hold of him, I'm gonna, beat him over the head with it and tell him you're a catcher. You wanted to catch, you need to catch, and you're gonna bring more value to this team by being a catcher. He doesn't have to catch much. He catch once a week, twice a week. Delay catch once a week, twice a week. Indy catches the rest of the time. But if Indy swings the bat, he needs to be in the lineup. He can't play 2-1. Right? He needs to play if he's going to hit like he did in the minor leagues. And we were talking about a guy that hit better than Buster Posey in the minor leagues. 325, 25, and almost 100. Just a year removed. He struggled this year because he was too focused on defense, which I think was part of the plan. So I would love to see those guys rotate around and move. Who's hot, who's not? Because I think, Henry Davis is going to be a little streaky at times. But if you face a bunch of guys that he lines up well against, I think he's going to crush. And you want him in that lineup as much as possible during that. But thing is, Connor Joe's going to be the same. Some of those trends that he has, Henry Davis has, Kutch as well. So it's hard to get all three of those guys in the lineup. So you got to get a little creative. And I think Indy having the ability to play left, right, second, and first base gives you a lot more of, I guess, good options, a lot more. So
no matter what they do, someone will be mad too, and they'll be very loud about it on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now. But
yeah,
anyway.
some of the fans will for sure. But the thing is if somebody is out, I think now they have the ability to make big decisions and make weird trades. That's why I said if G1 base here, because the reality of it is if they get what they want, they have assets. And I think about it as a stock, right? We're trying to grow, our stock as high as we can. We have to sell our assets to grow that stock. And these guys are becoming assets. Guys that have touched the big leagues, they've shown plus ability in different ways. They're assets to other teams. And hopefully we can net something back that really helps our team.
You brought up all the infielders that they've called up throughout this last season. In your opinion, who kind of impressed you the most and raised their stock the most?
Probably Peguero. I thought defensively he got a lot better. He's better at second base defensively, but I think he's very serviceable at shortstop, if not possibly at some point being above average. And then Triolo was obviously the unicorn of the bunch. He was by far the best rookie, offensively and defensively. The changes he made late in the season with Andy Haynes and that hitting crew was absolutely phenomenal. I think it's really going to open him up to be a completely different player, especially when it comes to his gap to gap ability. And I compared him to Ben Zobrist. I think he's a guy that could be a plus defender anywhere you put him, so he's never a liability. He's always an enhancement to your team. So I think he's a absolute shoe in for this team and maybe even a guy that they try to possibly extend.
Nate, you want to ask your... Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was a great comparison, though. Ben Zobrist, I mean, Triolo coming up and you're able to bat 300 for the Pirates, and being, mixed into different positions, I think is a great asset to have. But, switching a little bit in terms of different side of the game, looking at the pitching for the Pirates, a lot of question marks, down their starting rotation. But I want to talk about Mitch Keller. I mean, this year had a big year, all-star season. He had a little bit of a slump after the all-star break. But what do you make of his season this year? And is he definitely a guy that can be a number one moving forward and take a team into the postseason?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that's going to flirt with being a number one most of his career now. He added that new cutter coming into this year, enhanced that sweeper, really changed the usage to, his four-seamer became his best fastball, pretty early on because of that cutter. And then this offseason, he has the chance just to refine all of those things. He's not going searching unless he tries to develop a better changeup, which isn't going to hurt anything. As long as he understands his identity is, hard stuff, sweeper, and I think he does. And I think he can really take off into a whole nother level, especially if he can take control of the game when he doesn't have his best stuff. That's the mark of a great pitcher, a guy that can go pitch 6 innings, give up 3 or 4 and you're still, in the ball game almost every time he's out there. And I think he's that type of guy. I think he's learning as he goes. And this year, I thought he took a huge step forward. Not just because he made the all-star team. I think it was the second half that proved the most to me, because when he started getting knocked around, I guess it was about 7 or 8 starts, he kind of scuffled. And then seeing his approach and watching him adapt within the game was fun to see.
And you touched on earlier saying you didn't want the Pirates to go out and get a veteran first baseman out of free agency.
Unless it's Santana, just because I like
it. I love Carlos Santana. I was bummed when they traded him, but I'm happy. He had a big hit yesterday, I think, from Milwaukee or 2 days ago. But regardless, is there anybody you really want them to target going into free agency? Maybe take them to that next level, get another veteran presence in the locker room.
Kutch. I want Kutch. I want Kutch tomorrow. I think honing in on your guys that you already have is the most important thing they can do. When you see guys relax after they sign a contract, I think you guys watching that air come out of them would understand. Like say you show up, you didn't study for the test, and they say, "Hey, we don't have the test. Everybody gets 100." That's that feeling it looks like they get. I remember when Kutch did it, and then 2012 arguably is his best year. I know he won the MVP in 13, but in 12, he had his best year right after he signed because they believe in you and you're going to be somewhere. And that means a lot. I think that's why we're going to see a better version of Reynolds moving forward. I think that's why Hayes was able to make some huge adjustments in the middle of the season that he did not want to make at all, which is cool. But guys that aren't under contract, it's very scary for him. That's why Triolo doing that is remarkable. Sawinski doing that is remarkable because it's hard to do in the big leagues. It's hard to trust that you're going to get that many chances to fail. And Triolo didn't have many chances. He succeeded right away. And if he didn't, he would have been, platooning more. He wouldn't have been playing as much. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I want to see is them go out and make some heavy, heavy hits right inside the organization.
It's like you're reading the questions right off my sheet here. You brought up Kutch. Obviously he means so much to
Is there a free
city.
agent you guys like? I mean, I have some free agents that I like, that I think we can afford. I think we would be better served to try to get someone in an acquisition, a more controllable asset if possible, but we'll see. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Who you guys got?
Kutch is my answer as well, and you're totally going to think I'm blowing smoke out of my behind, but Kutch has meant a lot to me personally for things we don't need to get into, so seeing him finish in Pittsburgh is like the be all end all for me. So Nate, I guess the pressure's on you. Sorry.
Why can't we get into it? I'd love to hear it. I know he's a great human. He's one of my close friends.
Oh boy, he just opened a can of worms he doesn't know about, Nate. I had cancer when I was in middle school, and my make-a-wish was to meet Kutch. So I met him during his MVP year, actually, and he was incredible. And then when I graduated high school, I got a scholarship through Make-A-Wish, and he
I met you too. I remember.
Okay. I couldn't remember if you were on the team not or still. Sorry on my end for that. But
no, you were no. Do not ever say sorry because you were fulfilling a dream. You didn't see anything else but Andrew. Right? That's so cool.
That's true because they walked me into the facility and he was standing there and I was like, that can't possibly be how they want this to happen. So I was like staring at the organizer lady, like I definitely shouldn't be seeing him yet. She's like, look at him. Like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? So yeah, but then I met him That's 4 years later and I dapped up Garrett Cole and he was gone shortly after, but we don't need to get into Garrett Cole. That we don't actually have to get into, but yeah, Kutch is awesome. And him finishing here would be really cool in my opinion. And probably everyone else's. I won't act like I'm unique in that situation, but
it just wouldn't be right if he didn't.
Yeah, I think there'd be a hellstorm for the front office if that didn't happen. So,
agreed. What about you? What do you got?
Yep. We mentioned Carlos Santana. I can't really beat anything yet. I haven't looked too far into free agency yet, especially with the season just concluding. But I think Carlos Santana potentially reunion. Back in Pittsburgh because the time he spent here, he had some big hits. He had the big walk-off. Probably the best moment, arguably, of the season, maybe other than the big comeback against the Reds. But, I think him as the first baseman, potentially, but it's hard. We mentioned Triolo and Connor Joe, playing well. It's hard to bring, potentially him back. But in terms of other free agents, I haven't really looked too far into it yet, just especially with the season coming to a close not too long ago.
I think Ohtani was the answer you were looking for.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
So Clayton Kershaw, Marcus Stroman, Charlie Morton, Martin Perez, Lance Lynn, Adam Wainwright's obviously retiring. Rodriguez from Detroit. He has an opt-out if he wants it. Josh Hader. Yeah, there's a bunch of going. Ross Stripling's pretty interesting. But yeah, there's a bunch of like random guys. Aaron Nola, Carlos Carrasco. So there's a bunch of guys that they go after. I'd love to see him go after Sonny Gray, but I don't think they can afford him.
Yeah, I was just looking. There's a very random hodgepodge of players on that list where I think some of them might be worth a gamble, though. I'm a big Michael Brantley guy. He's on there. I couldn't even tell you how he's played the last couple of years, but I loved him in Cleveland because my grandpa loved him. And so there's another weird connection where that'd be cool to see him be a Pirate.
I think he came back in August. He was hurt. I don't know if he had shoulder surgery or what. But yeah, Mike Clevenger is a guy that I had on my list last year. And Luis Giolito is another guy I had. Both guys fit in Pittsburgh. I feel like they have a little bit of a Pirate mentality too. So yeah.
Yeah. Nate?
Yeah, I mean, just looking though back, in terms of hitting, for the Pirates, for Reynolds and Sawinski and Hayes, you saw a lot of slumps from them this season, a couple slumps where they lasted pretty long. For those guys, I mean, you want to see some more consistency. I mean, you look at a team like Atlanta, they have their three big hitters down there and Olsen and Acuna and Albies, and they're hitting at a consistent level and they're putting up big numbers. How do you get to that point with those three guys or even a couple other players in the lineup?
It's everybody that's around them. It's not necessarily Hayes. Hayes took off and didn't really stop from June on. He had that rough patch when he first came back for 7 games. Reynolds, I think, almost had as good a year as he did his All-Star year. When you look at all of the, exit velocity, the batting average balls put in play, his expected batting average, expected slugging, all those numbers were off the charts. But when you surround those guys with a bunch of youngsters and they're not necessarily taken off, it makes it really hard to produce at an elite level because you notice it so much, right? If we had, just a couple of guys you just mentioned, you have Riley, you have Olsen, you have Acuna, 2 of those guys could be slumping and Acuna could carry the team. You know what I mean? And that's the difference. And I think we saw a little bit of that. Triolo pretty much carried our team and Reynolds he was getting on base, but he wasn't hitting. And early in the year, they weren't pitching to Reynolds. Kutch started hitting. They pitched to Reynolds, early in the year, they didn't want to pitch to Kutch. They pitched to Reynolds, then they flip-flopped. And having just that presence with him in the lineup's a big deal. But if some of these young guys and also getting O'Neal Cruz back is really going to make that lineup balance out. Some guys have made some names for themselves. Sawinski's going to be more consistent as he had a huge September. And I think that's going to really make it, stand out that these guys aren't slumping. They're just having their woes of the season. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And in terms of looking at, all the things we've talked about so far, heading into next season, 2024 is a season that people are highlighting as the year the Pirates may return to the postseason. You were there on the team in 2013. What does postseason baseball mean to the city of Pittsburgh?
For some reason, I think over 500 means just as much. I think that's the thing they look at and say, did we have a good season? And that's the start. So I think that's priority number 1. And then, for every guy that ever puts on a uniform, getting in the postseason and win a World Series is their priority number 1. So I think it should mean the world. They call it City of Champions for a reason. I think Pirates baseball needs to get back into the rich history, understand it better, and embrace it in the way that they used to, and maybe even more so. They started that Hall of Fame. I think the guys need to understand who those guys are, how rich and deep this history is. Some of the greatest players of all time played in Pittsburgh in a Pirates uniform, and we're one of 2 teams that has never left the city. We've been in the same city since day one, and that's special. And we need to take off in a way that the fans get behind it, the city gets behind it, the players get behind it, personnel gets behind it. Even the janitor's going to get behind it if we come together as a group like we did in 13. And this team's going to be better.
All right. And now perhaps the most important question before we let you go here. We all want playoff baseball in Pittsburgh, but perhaps something Pirates fans care about more, maybe than even the on-field product, is the most exciting event to take place on a summer night in Pittsburgh, and that is the pierogi race at a Pirates baseball game. So who is your favorite pierogi?
I like Hannah. She's got a purse. I wish she would use it to beat him with, you know. I'm a spicy guy, so jalapeno Hannah is my favorite. Cheese Chester, I feel like he's just lugging himself down, eating all that cheddar.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What about you guys?
I'm a big sauerkraut Saul guy. I don't even like sauerkraut. Something about him, he just looks like a guy you want to root for.
Yeah, I get it. It's easy to root for him, but sauerkraut.
Been a Chester guy ever since, I was young. So go with
Gotta
him.
stick to your roots.
Yeah.
Oh. Last time we talked, you were talking about a dog tracking app or some sort that you were working on with Garrett Jones, actually. Has that made strides since we? Oh, really?
Yeah, it's sold and gone. Helped build up another company that transitioned twice. Now it's got a new name out of that too, and I'm working on a new venture. So stay tuned.
Sounds good. Will do. Michael McKenry, thanks you very much for joining us tonight.
Hey, I appreciate it. Anytime, guys, and keep your passion. If you ever got questions or just want to talk shop, let me know. I'm always here. I love talking baseball.